My dad suspended me until I said sorry to my sister. I simply replied, okay. The following morning, she wore a smug expression until she noticed my empty desk and resignation letter. The company lawyer rushed in, looking pale. Tell me you didn't post it. My dad's smile vanished instantly. Hey, Reddit. I always understood that working for my family was risky, not in a physical sense, but emotionally. Every success was compared to my sister, Marissa, while every mistake I made was amplified, whereas hers were overlooked. Yet I stuck around. Maybe it was loyalty, or perhaps it was hope. I was the operations manager at my dad's company, the one who kept everything running smoothly while Marissa drifted from department to department, never staying long enough to learn anything. She was the creative genius, the golden child, the one my dad praised for simply existing. But the tension finally erupted one Thursday evening. It started with a disagreement over a client file. Marissa had deleted important notes from our shared server yet again because she didn't like clutter. Unfortunately, that clutter included details that prevented us from breaching a contract. When I gently confronted her in private, she blew up. You always act superior, she yelled in the hallway, loud enough for half the office to hear. Maybe try being less obsessed with perfection. Dad stormed out of his office. He didn't inquire about what happened or ask for context. He looked straight at me. Apologize to your sister, he barked, his voice echoing throughout the office. It was an accusing finality. I blinked. For what? For upsetting her, he replied. From now on, you're suspended until you apologize. The room spun and employees gaped. Marissa smirked, victorious and smug, as if she had just won a prize. I wanted to scream, to defend myself. Instead, I took a deep breath and said the only thing that gave me power. Okay. Dad's eyebrows shot up. Marissa's smirk grew wider. But inside, something shifted within me. That night, I came home, poured myself a glass of water, and opened my laptop. For the first time in 6 years, the resignation letter I had kept in a just-in-case folder didn't frighten me. I updated the date, listed my equipment returns, and removed all the polite lies about other opportunities. Then I printed it, signed it, scanned it, and scheduled an auto-send for 8 a.m. Dad always arrived at 8 o'clock. Marissa usually wandered in around 8:20, coffee in hand and sunglasses on, pretending to be busy. My timing was perfect. The next morning, I arrived early, before anyone else. The office was empty, still humming as computers warmed up. I packed up my desk, every pen, notebook, and plant. I wiped the surface clean until it looked like I had never existed. Before leaving, I placed my key card on top of the resignation letter, a symbolic farewell to my patience. At 8 a.m., right on schedule, my resignation landed in the company inbox. I wasn't there to witness it. I was already gone. Marissa strutted in at 8:25, ready to gloat, and headed straight for my desk, eager to enjoy my humiliation. What she found instead was a bare workspace, empty, spotless, and silent. No computer, no mugs, no notebooks, nothing. Just the resignation letter lying neatly in the morning light. She froze. This isn't funny, she muttered. Where is she? Then she spotted the key card, and her smirk vanished. She grabbed the letter and dashed down the hallway toward Dad's office. Meanwhile, in Dad's office, he opened his email, expecting a morning update as usual. Instead, he read the first paragraph, then the second, and finally the third. By the fourth line, he stopped breathing because my resignation wasn't just a letter. It included a complete list of everything I managed in every department I oversaw, all the client relationships I maintained, every system I built, and most importantly, a warning that without me, several critical deadlines would collapse within days. I didn't threaten. I merely laid out the facts. Dad's face reportedly drained of color.
No. No.
No, he whispered. Right then, chaos erupted. The company lawyer rushed down the hallway, looking as pale as chalk. He burst into Dad's office. Tell me you didn't post it, he gasped. Post what? Dad rasped. The job listing, the lawyer shouted. You suspended your operations manager and publicly posted her position. Do you realize what that means? Dad's stomach dropped because posting my job made it appear as if he had wrongfully replaced me. He forced a resignation. The suspension seemed like retaliation, and the company was now unstable. It also voided certain legal protections he believed he had. When Marissa stumbled into the room with the letter, shaking, Dad's eyes widened in horror. "You didn't resign," he whispered, almost pleadingly. But the letter was right there, signed, stamped, sent, final. "Dad, what do we do?" Marissa's voice trembled. For the first time in my life, my father had no answer. The smug smile he wore just the day before vanished on the spot. I wasn't trying to destroy the company, nor was I trying to punish anyone. I simply walked away from people who expected me to stay, no matter how deeply they hurt me. Leaving wasn't revenge. It was self-respect. For the first time, that felt like enough. But my departure didn't just incite panic. It revealed secrets, loyalties, and consequences my family never anticipated. When the truth finally emerged, it altered everything. When my resignation landed and my desk remained empty, the company didn't just lose a manager, it lost the quiet order I had maintained. The first 48 hours made it clear that the role was less about a title and more about being the hub of numerous moving parts, vendors, certifications, and client rollouts scheduled for the next week. At 8:30 a.m., the lawyer burst into the main office, paperwork clutched tightly. He didn't look at Dad but at the empty desk and then at the inbox, where the auto reply about my departure had already been sent to several clients. "You posted the role," he asked, his voice raw. "You posted it publicly. Do you understand the implication? This will look like a termination, not a suspension. You've exposed the company to claims of wrongful dismissal." He paused. "Several of our contracts have clauses tied to management continuity. We could be in breach." Dad's face turned gray. He hadn't considered anything beyond the immediate theatrics. The posting was meant to be leverage. Instead, it became proof. Proof that they would replace me, proof that the company's governance was careless, and proof that a family dispute had spilled into corporate risk. Across the office floor, the operations team began exchanging escalating messages. A scheduled deployment server required a manual adjustment I had handled. A vendor called asking for approval. A client, a major account that represented nearly a quarter of monthly revenue, sent a terse email. "We need an operations manager contact for our compliance report." Who is handling this? The inbox flooded, and the clock ticked. Marissa, who had smiled when Dad exerted his power, now looked like a child who had set a building ablaze with a sparkler. Her smirk had turned into panic. She bounced between phone calls, her face pale. My mother sat down and began to cry quietly, realizing the cost of the narratives she had woven for herself. The lawyer paced, then shifted to a pragmatic approach. "We need containment. We have to announce that the position is being temporarily managed by an interim team, explain to clients that there's no operational risk." He paused because he understood the reality. The interim team didn't know the code I had written, the contracts I had negotiated, or the workarounds I had created on the fly. That was when I received a message, not from Dad, nor from the lawyer, but from our largest client. "Is everything okay? We can pause, but we need certainty." I could have ignored their plea and let them scramble. I could have let the company unravel at the seams I had held together. I had no desire to burn the place down. My fight was with the culture that regarded me as expendable, not with the people who depended on our work. So I made a choice. I replied, "I can help stabilize for 2 weeks. I will provide transition documentation, handover sessions, and remote access to critical logs, but I will not step back into the old dynamics. There are conditions." These conditions weren't revenge. They were boundaries and governance measures that the family had avoided for years. First, a public statement from my parents acknowledging the improper suspension and confirming that my departure was voluntary, along with a genuine apology to me and the affected clients. Second, a promise to implement an independent HR process for grievances and a policy prohibiting immediate family members from making unilateral personnel decisions. Third, funding for external consultants to audit operations for 2 months. Fourth, a guarantee that any replacement hiring would be merit-based and overseen by an interim board that included a neutral third party. My message landed like a small pebble in the lawyer's shoe. He grabbed his phone, called Dad, then Catherine from compliance, and sent me a message. "We need to discuss terms now." I met Dad and the lawyer in his office. He was frantic, his bravado gone. "Just tell me you'll come back," he pleaded once the lawyer explained the legal exposure. "We can fix this. We'll say anything." I looked at him. The man who had pointed a finger at me now had the nerve to ask me to patch the wound he caused with a promise. "I'll help stabilize," I said. "But I won't be your Band-Aid. The culture must change. The policies must be written. You must be transparent, and my terms have to be public." Dad agreed, not because he felt guilty, but because he calculated the risk and saw the bottom line spiraling toward damage. A week later, a carefully crafted company statement was released. "We regret the recent actions that led to the temporary suspension of a valued manager. We apologize for any distress caused and are implementing immediate governance changes. We are committed to transparency and continuity of service." It was clumsy and corporate smooth, but it was out there. The lawyer had negotiated the wording to limit legal exposure, but the apology was present, public, and that mattered. Over the following 2 weeks, under my conditions, I provided handover documents, remote walkthroughs, and crisis training. I trained an interim lead, participated in compliance calls, and revised procedure manuals. The company weathered the worst of the initial storm. Some clients stayed, some left. The balance sheet wobbled but didn't tip. My sister apologized publicly at the client brunch she organized to make amends. It was awkward, flushed with shame, but sincere. My parents attended HR training. We appointed a neutral director to the board to oversee hiring and grievances. I didn't remain on the payroll. Instead, I negotiated a consultancy retainer that compensated me for the emergency work without requiring a return to the previous dynamics. 6 months later, the company was quieter and steadier. The culture hadn't transformed overnight, but the policy had become a safeguard. My sister and I weren't best friends again. Old wounds take time to heal. However, our interactions no longer revolved around power struggles. My parents had moments of genuine regret and tried, albeit imperfectly, to listen. As for me, I took my severance and consultancy fee and invested it not in revenge, but in something enduring, a small operations consultancy. I began assisting small businesses in building robust systems so that one person's absence wouldn't destabilize everything. I turned responsibility, the very thing that had bound me, into my livelihood. On a bright spring morning, I walked past my old office building. I paused, looked at the small plaque with my father's company name, and felt a strange relief. I had been more than a manager. I had been someone who refused to be erased. I chose boundaries, demanded accountability, and preserved the work for those who needed it. I left to maintain my dignity and returned on my terms to save what truly mattered. In the end, my resignation wasn't a door slammed shut. It was a door opened to a life I chose for myself.